Hello everybody, welcome to G James channel. Madinat Olatunji is my name. I will be taking you through overview of public sector accounting and finance. The syllabus is divided into 4 major parts. Part A entails regulatory and conceptual framework of public sector accounting, which takes 20%. Part B is planning and budgeting. It also takes 20%. Part C falls under reports and audits. It is 30% of the syllabus. And we have the last part, which is Part D, public finance, 30% of the syllabus. This 4 major division of the syllabus is further divided into 37 chapters. The 4 major division of the syllabus, the 4 major parts of the syllabus is further divided into 37 chapters. The 37 chapters Chapter 1 to 9 fall under A part of the syllabus, which is the regulatory and conceptual framework of public sector accounting. Chapter 10 alone is the B part, which is planning and budgeting. Chapter 11 to chapter 30 is the bulkiest of the syllabus, and it covers the C part of the syllabus, which falls under reports and audits. Then we have the last 7 chapters. The last 7 chapters is under public finance. So moving on to the breakdown of each chapter. The breakdown of each chapter. We have chapter 1. The first chapter, chapter 1, will expose you to the definition of public sector accounting and also definition of public sector itself, the objectives of public sector accounting, the basis applicable to public sector accounting, and so on. Now we move to chapter 2. The major head word in chapter 2 is METF, Medium-Term Expenditure Framework. It is a medium-term high-level strategic plan of government, usually 3 years in Nigeria, and which forms the basis of annual budgeting, taking into consideration the law requirement that spending should not exceed revenue by more than 3% of the GDP. So under this chapter, you'll be exposed to the METF, Medium-Term Expenditure Framework, the risk to METF, and so on. So we'll move to chapter 3. Chapter 3 is ethical issues in public sector accounting and finance. Ethical issues in public sector accounting and finance. Under this chapter, we have the ICPC, Independent Corrupt Practice Commission. Their functions will be dealt with, their objectives, their powers. Also, it also talks about EFCC, Economic Financial Crimes Commission. That takes us to Chapter 4. Chapter 4 is Government Construction Contracts and Procurement. Government Construction Contracts and Procurement. Under Chapter 4, we will be learning about definition of contract, parties to contracts, the bidding process, the standard that guides accounting for construction contracts, which is IPSAS 11. And also the chapter talks about IPSAS 12, which is accounting for inventory. Accounting for inventory. Moving to Chapter 5. Chapter 5 is Professional Pronouncements on Government Accounting. Professional Pronouncements on Government Accounting. In order to strengthen the Nigerian economy, the Nigerian government has been enacting various laws and setting up various legally backed commissions, which leads to International Federation of Accountants. International Federation of Accountants, IFAC. Have their powers, their objectives of the commission, and so on. Moving to Chapter 6. Chapter 6 is Pension and Gratuity. Pension and Gratuity. Under this chapter, you will learn about the deficiencies of Pension Reform Act of 2014, the Pension Fund Custodian, the Retirement Benefits Plan, and also the current rate of contribution by the employer and employee in every organization. Then we'll move to Chapter 7. Chapter 7 is International Public Sector Accounting Standard 39, Employee Benefits. IPSAS 39, Employee Benefits. Under this chapter, you'll be exposed to the definition of employee benefits, be it short-term, long-term benefits, termination benefits, and so on, and how to account for them. Then we move to Chapter 8. Chapter 8 is Emerging Issues in Public Sector. Emerging Issues in Public Sector. In order to fight corruption and strengthening the economy, the Nigerian government commenced the implementation of policies, programs, and projects which leads to creation of TSA, Treasury Single Account. The chapter will expose you to the components of TSA, models of TSA. We also have the IPPIS, Integrated Personnel Payroll Information System, the GIFMIS, and so on. Chapter 8. So moving to Chapter 9. Chapter 9 covers standardization of federal, state, and local government reporting formats in Nigeria. For short, National Chart of Accounts. The major headword in the chapter is the National Chart of Accounts. The National Chapter of Accounts is a complete list of budgets and accounting items, where each item is usually represented by a code and grouped into tables of related data for the purpose of what? Tracking. Making tracking to be very easy. The objectives of the National Chapter of Accounts will be dealt with in this chapter, the structure, and many more. And that completes the A part of the syllabus, which is regulatory framework. Moving to the B part of the syllabus, which is just a chapter, budgeting and budgetary control, chapter 10. So in this chapter, you'll be learning about the cash budget, the personnel cost budget, the overhead cost budget, and many more. And we'll move to the chapter 11. Chapter 11 is transparency and accountability in public sector. Chapter 12 is financial responsibilities of public officers. Financial responsibilities of public officers. Under this chapter, we'll be learning more about the Auditor General for the Federation, their powers, their duties, and the function of the office. Also, you'll be exposed to the functions, powers, and duties of Accountant General of the Federation, the Sub-Accounting Officer, the Interest Holder, and many more. That takes us to chapter 13. Chapter 13 is on sources of government revenue. Sources of government revenue. We have different sources of government revenue. This chapter will talk more on the sources of government revenue we have. Then we move to chapter 14. Chapter 14 is authorization of government expenditure and financial control of public sector revenue. Also, chapter 15 is preparation of vouchers and their uses. Chapter 16 is functions of cash office and subsidiary accounts. Chapter 17 is preparation of monthly transcripts of a self-accounting unit under cash basis. Then chapter 18 is stores, accounting, and loss of government fund. Chapter 19 is cash management and borrowing guidelines. Chapter 20 is public sector audits. Public sector audits. Under this chapter, we'll have different types of audits, the meaning of audits, assurance engagements, and so on. Chapter 21 covers preparation of statutory financial statements for governments in accordance with cash basis IPSAS. Then we move to chapter 22. Chapter 22 is accounting for local governments. How to prepare the local government accounts, their expenditure, the format of their revenue and expenditure, and many more. Then we move to chapter 23. Chapter 23 is preparation of statutory financial statement for government in accordance with Accura basis IPSAS. And also we have chapter 24, Chapter 24 is IPSAS 33, first time adoption of accrual basis. The requirements of the standard will be dealt with respect to the first time adopters of IPSAS. Then we move to chapter 25. Chapter 25 is accounting for public sector organization and government business entities. Chapter 26 is interpretation of public sector financial statements using relevant and appropriate technique. Under this chapter, you'll be exposed to ratio analysis in public sector and how to interpret them for decision making. Chapter 27, 28, 29, and 30. Those 4 chapters covers IPSAS 1 to IPSAS 40. That is International Public Sector Accounting Standards. Those are the standards that guide how to account for each transaction. We have the corresponding IASs and IFRSs. That completes the C part of the syllabus, which falls under reports and audits. Then we move to the last part of the syllabus, which is part D, public finance. The first chapter under that is chapter 31, which is Introduction to Public Finance. Introduction to Public Finance. Under this chapter, we'll be learning about the definition of public finance, the 2 major types of goods in public. We have the private goods and also the public goods. We'll move to chapter 32. Chapter 32 covers public revenue. Public revenue. So, government revenue can be generated from different sources, but we have 2 major sources: taxes and non-tax. Taxes and non-tax. So the non-tax part is majorly from oil revenue. And we'll move to chapter 33. Chapter 33 is public expenditure. Chapter 33 is public expenditure. Under this chapter, you'll be exposed to the meaning of public expenditure, the effects of public expenditure on the economy, and many more. Then chapter 34, which is public debt. Under this chapter, you'll be exposed to the definition of public debt, sources of debt, internal debt and external debt, instruments for borrowing. There will be justification for tax or debt to finance capital projects by government, methods of burden transfer or burden sharing, and many more. We'll move to chapter 35. Chapter 35 is Fiscal Federalism. The major focus of this chapter is on tax and expenditure assignments. Tax and expenditure assignments. That takes us to chapter 36. Chapter 36 is Project appraiser in public sector. Project appraiser in public sector. Under this chapter, we'll be learning on different techniques used in appraising projects in public sector. The two major techniques applicable to public sector projects are the cost-benefit analysis and the cost-effectiveness analysis. Also, we have other techniques like the payback period, the IRR, the ARR, internal rate of return, the IRR, which is accounting rate of return, and also NPV. Then we move to the last chapter. The last chapter, which is emerging issues in public finance. This chapter majorly talks on business cycle. Business cycle. Under this chapter, we have the recession phase, the peak phase, the boom or prosperity phase, the decline, and many more. Thank you for listening. Bye for now.